Some of the documents I have brought are: 1, the Congressional Research Service Report on Geoengineering Governance and Technology Policy dated November 26, 2013. 2, the May 10th, 2010 report by the Belfort Group, a Belgian environmental watchdog group titled Case Orange, Contrail Science, its impact on climate and weather manipulation programs conducted by the United States and its allies. 3, a binder titled Government Documents Link Global Warming to Advanced Military Climate Modification Technology. 4, a United States Air Force research paper titled Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather by 2025, dated August 1996. And 5, an official United States Air Force Chemistry Manual, Department of Chemistry, Chemistry 131 Manual from the fall of 1990, titled Chemtrails. In addition, 2 leading American medical doctors are on the record stating the program is happening and there are huge detrimental health issues related to the chemicals being used. They are the neurosurgeon, medical researcher, and former military MD, Dr. Russell Blaylock, and Dr. Rima Labo, MD, whose husband is retired Major General Stubblebine and who is on the record affirmatively stating the program is currently happening. I will only be able to briefly touch upon some of the major points, history, and law supporting the case that geoengineering is in full force and effect and has been for at least 40 years. It is harmful to both human and ecosystem health, and we, the people, and the entire ecosystem are the collateral damage of this covert but in plain sight program science experiment. I do not consent to this currently in effect actual and present program. An injury and harm does exist, and I am here now on the record in this public forum setting giving actual legal notice of such. I do not consent. The CIA and NASA have both admitted to utilizing geoengineering. President George W. Bush's Director of Science and Technology, John H. Marburger III, in his December 13th, 2005 letter to Texas Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, specifically stated that a whole host of concerns, including legal, liability, research, and national security, needed to be addressed to gain a better understanding of the full range of possible implications before the government would undertake, quote, a national research program, unquote. An emphasis added, because he was just talking about a research program, not implementing an actual program. On January 1st, 2011, John Holdren, the Science and Technology Director under President Obama, completely removed all oversight of the geoengineering issue, which was being conducted by the House of Representatives Science and Technology Subcommittee during 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no transparency of this program, and the national security of the United States, its people being its most precious asset, are in grave and serious danger, as Director Marburger intimated, cautioned, and advised. We are under a dangerous aerial assault by unmarked airplanes daily. A major part of scientific fact is based upon observation. In the sky above Phoenix on an almost daily basis, I visually observe completely unidentifiable, unmarked airplanes that are emitting aerosol plumes of matter that spread, descend, and saturate the atmosphere. From my home, I have a very clear vantage point of the commercial air traffic pattern for Sky Harbor Airport. I am able to visually identify the commercial airplanes without any visual aids, such as binoculars. None of the commercial airplanes are emitting these persistent chemical plumes. None of them. All of the commercial airliners are flying in the same exact troposphere as the unmarked airplanes. They ascend and descend through elevations and altitudes on their routes. As commercial airplanes fly into Phoenix from the west, they are at the same exact altitude as the unmarked airplanes in the designated airspace allotted for the commercial airplane routes. None of them, I repeat, none of the commercial airplanes are emitting the trails like the unmarked airplanes are doing. Moreover, upon closer scrutiny, as evidenced by close-up photography and videotape, the unmarked airplanes are emitting these emissions from specifically retrofitted nozzles on the tails of the airplanes and also specifically retrofitted nozzles on the wings. With regard to the scripted dialogue by the ADEQ found at their website on airplanes dispersing, quote, contrails, unquote, which they state are merely vapor trails, scientific and engineering facts contradict that story. The fact is that today's airplanes, with the minor exception of a very few high-powered military fighter jets, are all fitted with high bypass turbofan jet engines that are incapable of emitting contrails. And as I stated above, the unmarked airplanes emitting this air pollution is not coming from jet engines. The source of the persistent disbursement is from retrofitted nozzles on either the wings or tails of the aircraft. The state of Arizona has both the authority and the power to protect the atmosphere, and it's delegated that power to the ADEQ pursuant to Title 49-104A, subsections 1 through 10. Section 10 specifically states the ADAQ is to provide for the prevention and abatement of all water and air pollution, including that related to particulates, gases, dust, vapors, noise, radiation, odor, nutrients, and heated liquids. Under Title 49-422A, subsection 3A, the department may, with regard to any source of air contaminants, to monitor, sample, or perform other studies to quantify emissions of air contaminants or levels of air pollution that may be attributable to that source if the director determines that monitoring, sampling, or other studies are necessary to determine the effects of the source of the air pollution. Under Title 49.421, the legal definitions, ladies and gentlemen, of both air contaminants and air pollution are as follows. Air contaminants include smoke, vapors, charred paper, dust, soot, grime, carbon, fumes, sulfuric acid mist aerosols, aerosol droplets, odors, particulate matter, windborne matter, radioactive materials, or noxious chemicals, or any other material in the outdoor atmosphere. Air pollution means the presence in the outdoor atmosphere of one or more air contaminants or combinations thereof in sufficient quantities, which either alone or in connections with other substances by reason of their concentration and duration are or tend to be injurious to human, plant, or animal life, cause damage to property, or unreasonably interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property of a substantial part of a community, or obscure visibility, or which in any way would degrade the quality of the ambient air below the standards established by the director. And finally, Title 49-401-01, the legal definitions of adverse effects to human health and adverse environmental effects are as follow. Adverse effects to the human health means those effects that result in or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or an increase in serious, irreversible, or incapacitating reversible illness, including adverse effects that are known to be or may reasonably be anticipated to be caused by substances that are acutely toxic, chronically toxic, carcinogenic, mutagenic, tetragenic, neurotoxic, or causes of reproductive dysfunction. Adverse environmental effects means any significant and widespread adverse effect that may reasonably be anticipated on wildlife, aquatic life, or other natural resources, including adverse impacts on populations of endangered or threatened species, or significant degradation of environmental quality over broad areas. The state of Arizona's duty is ongoing and continuous, requiring the state to take into account and adjust to current conditions and act in light of changing circumstances and new information, so to ensure adequate protection of the atmosphere for this and future generations. One of the chemical constituents under serious consideration for, quote, proposed geoengineering programs is aluminum oxide, according to the Unilateral Geoengineering Workshop at the Council on Foreign Affairs and David Keith from their 2010 AAAS meeting on geoengineering. Aluminum oxide causes birth or developmental effects, brain and nervous system effects, and reproduction and fertility problems as noted by the Environmental Working Group. Many of the long list of geoengineering patents owned, for the most part, by the major military-industrial complex companies such as Raytheon exactly match the chemical constituents of aluminum, barium, and strontium found in sample tests of water, rain, soil, botany, and human blood and hair samples. Many of these patents are for nano-sized particulates, which are not recognized on instrumentation monitor devices in use by most environmental agencies. This instrumentation is not calibrated to identify a nano-sized particulate.
I think we need to let some other folks have a moment.
Okay, thank you.
First, I'd like to make a plain statement of fact. No matter what anybody thinks, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it will be obeyed by everybody, including the ADEQ. Next is a little bit of an opinion. We had hard questions here. I don't understand why the ADEQ would send somebody that looks more like a lawyer when we really need a scientist, maybe doctors, somebody that can answer the hard questions and not just shuffle us away and then you go on about your business. And the other thing is, this is a representative form of government, and we the people are the ones that you represent. And I'm not seeing a real good job being done. I hope we don't have to remind everybody the last voice is us. And we are ruled by the consent of the governed. And if we don't start getting back a little bit closer to what the people want, we may have to remove that consent and even remove some of the public officials that represent us. I do appreciate Kelly Ward for taking our questions, but how about if we do this again, we get a little bit more serious about it. Instead of lawyers and mouthpieces that can answer questions and cover for people, we start talking about the truth. There is something going on there, and I'm not the only one that's kind of upset about it. So how about if we do this again, we get a little bit more to the bottom of the truth and bring some of your scientists and let's see some of the proof. And incidentally, I got one last story and then I'll return this microphone. You know, in the early 1950s, when jet airplanes would fly over the house in West Virginia, my dad, who was a doctor by the way, we would go out and he would explain the difference between the jets and the propeller planes. I understood about the condensation trail way back in the 1950s. And you know, I've been watching those planes in the sky ever since. And as my memory serves me, about 1990, When I was going around exercising at the park over here, I looked up in the sky and I says, what in the heck is that? I've never seen that before. My dad was still alive then. I remember calling him a day or two later, talking to him on the phone. Have you ever seen anything like this? Well, I'm 60 years old, and I've watched the sky for most of that 60 years, and I'm telling you, I don't need to be a scientist. There's something changed. I don't know physics. If I drop this microphone behind my back, I don't need to be a master in physics to know it's not going to strike the ceiling, it's going to strike the floor. So the next time we have one of these meetings, let's get a little bit more serious about this and bring in some of the people that can answer these questions and the people that have the power, like Kelly Ward, to take it a step farther. We start actually getting to the bottom of this. We start reminding our elected officials we are concerned and we want something done. And we're not going to take no for an answer much longer. Thank you. I understood about the condensation trail way back in the 1950s. And you know, I've been watching those planes in the sky ever since. And as my memory serves me, about 1990, when I was going around exercising at the park over here, I looked up in the sky and I says, what in the heck is that? I've never seen that before.